Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we'll be breaking down my track Can't Let You Go that was released recently on Backlit Music. Also, before we start this video, I want to do a big shout out to Severman, who's the one that helped me take this track from like such a professional and pro level. This track would not be where it is today without his help. Then also a big shout out to Miles Away for adding that like last 10% and helping me with the mastering for this track. And then also big shout out to Amadeus for helping me with these vocal chops. Let's get right into it. All right, so first off, we have this like extended mix. Basically has like the drop kick in here. It's like some kick from Severman's pack that he released some time ago from one of his tracks, and I basically just boosted some of the low end to get more of that thump right here. Yeah. And then a little bit of EQ that's being automated. I think it turns off basically when the second part of the extended mix kind of comes in. Yeah. And then after that, it's just like, I think, clap thing. And we have some like claps and rides that are laid on top of that, and then some more claps and rides, I guess, for the second part. And all together. And then after that is a bunch of effects that are from the other parts of the track. You have like an uplifter here, some like downlifters, exhausts, and atmospheres. There's also this bass here that's a preset on Splice called Flume Reese. Basically just droning the first note of the chord, or the first chord root note. And after that we have the verse come in, have some like transition effects, and we have the bass now actually playing the chord progression, and then same arp and the chords here, which is a bunch of pads basically. And then you also have the vocals that come in as well. And then for the ARP, I've actually already showed this ARP in a previous video already, but just in case, it's basically a very simple ARP with 6 saws, you know, more on the D tune, less on the D tune, standard cutoff AB with the low pass filter, and some like portamento, and I don't even know this is on. Yeah, it's not even on. It's basically just like this minus super ARP that I modified a little bit. And then just some standard like, you know, distortion, EQ, and reverb. And your standard EQ and delay. In terms of the notes, like probably saw on countless of my videos, but just using a combination of the 1, 7, 5 the key, and adding a little bit of variation every so often, just to keep the listener more interested. So we're in the key of A sharp major, so the 1 of A sharp major will be A sharp, and then this is the 5 here, which is F, and then A is a 7, back to the 1, and then just variation of taste basically. And then actually the vocal processing was really standard, because actually the Splice vocal already had a fuck ton of processing on it, so there wasn't really much to do aside from just your standard EQ. Since this was like the more dry vocal, I just basically added a Valhalla room using the parallel reverb. This is the same exact way of doing your reverb as if you were like putting on a separate bus or you know, return track or send track, whatever it's called. I just did it this way this time because during that time Nurko was actually teaching me how to process vocals, so that was really the only reason. But yeah, they're literally the same exact process. But yeah, basically a parallel reverb here. You want to put the mix up to, you know, 100%, and then also an EQ, which basically is only EQing the reverb. So, you know, you have your standard like cutting out everything below 100, dipping out some of the highs, and then also sidechain the reverb to the vocal. Well, it should well, it should have been sidechain. Doesn't look like it. It is sidechain, which is interesting. I guess it shows, you know, if it sounds good, it sounds good. But definitely, yeah, this should have been sidechain to the vocal. And then after that is also another reverb that's actually setting the vocal in a certain space, so in a large chamber space. Same idea with the EQs, and same idea with the sidechain. It should have been sidechain, but yeah. And then after that is the H delay. Same idea with the parallel delay. EQing, you know, cutting out all the highs and some of the lows, and same idea with the sidechain. That should have been sidechain as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the vocal processing. I mean, I think like there might have been some doubles as the song progressed, but it wasn't too much, you know, other than that, because most of the processing was already done from the splice vocals. Okay, and then verse 1B to, you know, to add some extra variation. There's basically just some drums here. It's like the kick, some like, you know, rides from Severman sample pack, and then the Lost, some cymbals, I guess. And also this Cashmere snap here, basically adding a little bit of saturator on it, standard EQ, and a bit of reverb. Nothing too fancy there. Yeah, moving on to that, just having some transitions here, just to kind of like let the audience know that this is about to be a new section. So it's basically your standard like, you know, reverse synth and impact here. And then I just added this piano here. It's like the grandeur piano, kind of like closing the lid, I think, of what I did there, setting the tone to taste basically, and then some standard OTT EQ, just getting rid of some of the frequencies that I felt were a little harsh. Valhalla Room, and then the velocities are actually down all the way, or down to a certain extent, and then I basically just bumped the volume up again after doing that. And then one thing that I would have done differently here is because actually I made this project like back in, or I finished this project back in like, I don't know, December 2021 or February 2022, so it's been quite a while ago. And I advanced quite a bit from then, so a lot of things I would do differently now. But here I would even like add a little bit of strum in the piano to humanize it even more. You know, again, like, sounds good, it sounds good kind of thing. The velocity already helped a little bit, adding that kind of like humanization to it, so it's not so synthetic. And then after that, yeah, I think there's like this pluck on top of all of the pads. I think this is like just like your standard pluck. You know, you've seen like a variation of this type of pluck so many times, but it's just 8 saw waves, less on the detune, 7, a little bit more on the detune. You know, cut off the taste again, basically low pass, and then it's a tri-saw doing the inverse, which basically like inverts the saw wave, I believe, and then some more detune and a little bit of noise, looks like, and then it's just some standard reverb. Yeah. And then processing, just really standard like OTT, EQ, dipping out this area because it's a little bit heavy on the body. Delay, looks like some utility automation because I was actually opening up the cutoff filter, so I didn't want to get it to too loud in the mix, basically. And then it looks like for the pads, I actually added some extra notes here to taste, basically. And then these pads is a very standard pad in Silent, just like a saw wave. More in the detune, 8 saw waves. Same thing on this side. And like that's it. Oh, maybe and then this filter, so that way I can get rid of some of the highs. Oh, I even added the tri-saw on this one. But yeah, really simple stuff. Same thing with the EQ, cutting out everything below 100, dipping out that to have less in the body basically, and then also some gain automation because I also think there's a cutoff automation as well as the releases being automated as well. I guess just so that I can make it bigger as the buildup is building up. And this is a serum pad. Sounds like this. This one's like your more like one voice detune kind of pad. It's like one saw wave, sine wave, MG load 24 filter, both on A and B. A lot of drive. See if anything in here. Just like a standard EQ, cutting out some of the lows. And then another EQ, basically getting rid of any like, you know, super heavy like body area, because this pad actually had a lot of body. So yeah, just making room for all the other instruments basically in the mix. And then cutting out a lot of those highs too. And same thing with utility automation, I believe. Yeah. Additionally, I think another thing that I did too was to add more movement to the track was I took the silent and I actually was automating the cutoff filter quite aggressively, I think. Can't remember which one exactly it was. I remember, okay, well, maybe not. I thought I actually like did an automated the cutoff filter a bit more during like the chorus and breakdown to give a bit more movement to the track, something like that Audien likes to do, I think, with his plucks and stuff, or you know, whatever instruments he has in there. Like he'll keep automating the cutoff to go up and down, up and down. Okay, so that's what I did. So rather than like automating it to go like back and forth quite aggressively, I just kind of automated the pads and the silent cutoff filter just to open up during the build-up and then go back down basically. Then after that is just going to be introducing the saws. So that's what all the utility automation was there for, so that it doesn't like overpower the vocal and stuff. And yeah, after that I started introducing a lot of the drop elements, like this atmosphere that's just doing the root note of the key. Just like some sample from Splice basically. And then I also started auto filtering the saws as well. And I also did this like sweep with the EQ. And then also for the mid basses, I kind of like teased one as well. Same thing I did with the auto filter here as well. And then it looks like I left this bass in here because like without it, it just didn't have enough meat when I was introducing, you know, the drop bass. So that's basically just helping out fill out that, you know, extra low end frequencies basically. And then I also just took the vocal and just had it repeat saying go, go, go. And then I guess, yeah, there's just like reverb on here, delay that's being automated, the auto filter that's also going to be automated, and then I think that's it. This one's just cutting out some of the high end frequencies from the from the vocal. Yeah, just to give that like washout effect basically. And I think the ARP is also, the cutoff is opening up. Basically like everything is opening up as the build up is building up. And a utility gain automation on there. And then I'm also introducing the vocal chop as well with the same like type of auto filter. And then I have a bunch of effects here, just like, you know, your standard risers, a sub riser, another uplifter, a bunch of sweeps, you know, crashes, your standard effects basically, just to add more energy and give some more transition, so like the audience knows like the drop is about to come basically. And then I also have a bunch of drums here. These are all also from Splice. I think it's like some like Oliver snare or something like that. And clap. This is from the, I think this clap is from the casual sample pack actually, and then like another virtual riot snare. So I'm noticing with this, seems like there might be some phase issues, and I think that might be from the little Ultra Boy being automated. Let me just see what happens if we turn off that little Ultra Boy, because I kind of hear like it's like almost like shifting back and forth left and right. Yeah, so I think what I would do now compared to using little Ultra Boy to kind of like pitch the form instant pitch, basically, that's what I kind of did for the ones that did have the little Ultra Boy on, is probably use frequency shifter instead, because this frequency shifter actually I think like leaves the quality of the sample a lot better when you start like pitching it up using the fine tune. So that's what I've been actually been doing more recently, is using this to kind of build that same like, you know, pitch up effect when you with your build up drums. But yeah, it's just really standard like EQ here and reverb on this one, and then this clap, just standard EQ again, and then this snare, just a standard EQ, dipping out some of that body area as well. And then this processing on the drums, basically just like some very light distortion, basically. Glue compressor just to glue it all together. Some mid-side mode, cutting out, I believe, the mids, and then just a invisible limiter here. Basically, I'm just like using this as like the K clip, where I'm basically just clipping it now, so that way we have more space later when we start mastering, more headroom, so that way these things don't distort when you start like cranking the limiter. That's a trick I learned from NerdGo a while back. And then also, I think sidechained a lot of the instruments and the drums to the vocal, because before sidechaining it, the vocal actually got lost before the drop. So this is one way, so that way the vocal can pop to the mix when all the instruments are like all building up and stuff. And then just like a little sub right before the drop. Usually you kind of want to add something here so it's just not so empty. And then, yeah, start with the drop. So the percussions are like the same exact percussions you heard in the extended mix. Basically have like your, you know, clap, rides, and kick. And then for the second part, you start introducing another, you know, loop, just to add variation again. And then also this music core, like clap again. So yeah, that's pretty much the percussions, and then the effects are the same effects that you heard in the extended mix as well. And then also that riser again. And then also one thing I want to mention is I'm actually having a little small sample pack with the stems of this track, as well as some, I believe, preset racks or presets from this track that you can use. I will leave the link in the description below, doing that with backlit music. I think there should be a gate for you to follow or something like that. But yeah, that'll be in the link in the description below. And then also the atmospheres too. I've got a bunch of atmospheres in here. Basically, again, the stuff that you heard in the extended mix. This is basically just part of the vocal, just kind of chopped up to kind of like make its own melody. And then, yeah. And you have the same ARP just like opened up all the whole entire way with the cutoff filter. And then you have your vocal chops. Okay, so this glue compressor is basically just so that it doesn't change in volume, because previously you can even see in the waveform like the audio is kind of like all over the place. So that glue compressor was just so that they can be all the same volume. S1 imager to actually bring it more towards the mids, just to make room for the saws that are covering the sides and stuff. This kickstart, I think, is just being automated to be on when it's on for the drop. This EQ is basically just to get rid of some of those like 1000, mid-range frequencies, because it's actually getting a little bit mid-heavy when we didn't put the EQ. So I'll give you an example here. So yeah, basically it's just a dynamic EQ. Just right click, then there should be like a dynamic mode there, and then you basically just pull it down to taste. Then after that is a higher octave vocal chop. It's basically just pitched up, lower in performance, and then some standard EQ. So I put some like a parallel compression, just using the parallel compression preset there. And then this is actually where the distortion is coming from, is the saturator. After that, just another EQ, cutting out some of the lows and some of the highs. And then just an OTT, basically just compressing the shit out of it. And then another EQ to clean up some low end frequencies. A reverb. Utility just to bring it out more in the mix. And then a fab filter just to get rid of any resonant frequencies. And then an auto filter basically just for the build-up part. But yeah, I have like 2 videos on how to make vocal chops and process vocal chops. As you actually may have seen, my vocal chop processing is more or less the same fundamentals, but a bit different. I might actually put the reverb first and then distort it after using decapitator, so that way I can also distort the reverb. And my EQing is going to be a bit more aggressive on like lowering the shelves, just so I can get rid of any low end rumble, and then cutting out the highs is going to be the taste and context of the mix. But yeah, you're welcome to check those videos out on my YouTube. I'll leave some links in the description below. And then after that is another layer. It's just a lower octave layer. Same exact processing, just at a lower octave. I guess we'll move on to those basses up there. So first is like your standard like gritty bass. From the Fairlane sample pack, I guess. But yeah, more or less it's the same exact sound as the Kashmir angry bass. It's the classic like progressive house gritty bass. It looks like Fairlane actually just changed it a little bit by like adding a different octave and playing some different semitones and notes. But yeah, it's, standard distortion, EQ, and then a compressor. And then I just add a shit ton of OTT basically. Distortion, it's like I guess you have to like set it here with the VST I downloaded. It's just like the 2 Warmth one. EQ kind of left actually some less than the 100s because it was lacking a little bit in bass. So basically we put it back a little bit so that there can be a bit more space, so it can fill out that low end. So just kind of give you an idea here. And yeah, just a auto filter for the I think this is actually for the build-up, but I ended up not even doing anything with it. So and then this is just another like bass to layer on top of it. Kind of sounds like a talking bass or something like that. I don't know, it's just like some preset from Music Core. Looks like it has like 2 square waves. Phase, detune, 6 voices, retrigger. Yeah, nothing too complicated. It's really simple stuff here. Standard distortion, EQ. Looks like it's boosting some of the high ends and also boosting a little bit of that like bass range. And then again the compressor. Yeah, same thing with the EQ here, and the auto filters for the build up. But yeah, that's really it for the basses. Oh, even to make up for that like low end, boosted some of that 100 range area where it was kind of lacking. You can look at that span here too. Like let's say like for example like we just took that off. You can already hear like the drop's missing some meat already. So See, that's a really cool technique that I used to do back then. You can either boost the frequencies that are missing in your drop, or even what Nurko taught me like a long time ago was, you doing like a filler bass and just kind of like doing like a really aggressive, like almost phony cue where you're like almost doing like the brick wall or whatever, and basically just like cutting out to where the frequencies are needed in the like bass frequency range, basically. So yeah, just your standard like side chain, kickstart, 100%. Just so like the kick can cut through the mix, basically. All right, so that's that for the basses, and then got some saws here. So this is like how I used to layer saws like some time ago. Now I kind of stack it a little bit differently, but same fundamentals again. I think this is just like the aluminum saw, 6 voices, 7 voices, tri-saw, phase all the way, inverted, some noise, chorus, EQ, and then OTT, and then your standard EQ and cutting out some of the highs. This one I'm not using. And then after that we have this like higher octave saw, sounds like this. It's like massively distorted. Also, I think the Aluminum's super saw is just like your standard like saw wave, more detune on this time, 6 voices, less than detune on this one, 7 voices, and then tri-saw, just chorus this time. Then OTT, decapitator, EQ, cutting out a lot of the lows and the highs, and that's about it. Then after that is a more detune saw. It's like some virtual riot preset called like the biggest saw stack. Find it on Splice, basically. Just do some of the stuff in case. But yeah, it's more of like a more detuned saw. And then just like a lot of OTT again, standard like EQ, and then this time adding a S1 imager, because if we didn't have this, then the saw stack sounded like not as spread, basically. So it's kind of what would happen. So basically just giving the drop some more width, stereo width. And then I felt like the saw didn't have enough body, so this is what this saw is doing, basically. I think it's just like this like preset in Silent called like lead metal distorted, and I just kind of did some changes to it. But yeah, here's all the settings if you want it. 8 voices on a saw wave, less than a detune, some phase. Same thing here. A little bit of a pan, I guess. Yeah, that's about it. And then EQ, and then just dipping out some of this high-end range, because we mainly just need the body anyway for it. So this is basically the drop without it. Just filling it out a bit more. That's about it. Nowadays, what I'll kind of do is I'll just sift through some like saws and Omnisphere and find something that's like really more heavier in the mids, maybe like less detuned sounding, and basically just doing the same idea as that super saw. I've also used like Aluminum's like radio tone melodies saw that he put on his Lonely track. It's doing the same exact idea basically too. The next step, we just have some noise. Really standard noise, just EQ, and then a sub. This is the Virtual Riot dedicated sub. You also can find a Splice. This is something that is going to be preference, and I've received 2 different like outlooks on how to process your subs. This is when I had coaching with Nurko, so this is how he showed me how to process my subs. But basically distortion on the beefy preset to make it sound more beefy, basically. Some OTT to control the volume, because sometimes your sub can have different volumes at different notes, so the OTT was a way to control that. and then just basically setting all to mono and cutting out everything. I would actually do this a bit more. Basically just cutting out everything above like 100, 120 range, wherever sounds good in the mix, honestly. And then after that, Nurko also showed me he added like Corpus Kick Tight, which just basically beefed up the sub more. I think nowadays I might just do just the kick tight and then also the standard EQ. Just really depends on how it sounds in the mix, basically. But yeah, I would say just do what works for you too, and see like which sound you like more. Then for the chord stacks, I went pretty insane in terms of voicing. It's really like standard stuff. It's basically playing the octaves and then just droning the one of the key, which is A sharp, and then another A sharp up an octave, and then the fifth of the key, as these are, as you may have seen in my videos, like the safe notes of the key. So you can pretty much, as long as you're like not doing anything like super advanced and you're staying like within the relative minor or major of the key, the 1 and 5 is like a safe bet. You can just drone throughout your whole entire chord progression. And I just added notes to taste from what I basically thought sounded good. Then one thing I forgot to show was like how I created the vocal chop. It was just literally finding notes in the vocal and then just cutting it up to a melody that I essentially liked. So that's about it. Again, you can check out all the rest of the other videos I've shown on vocal chops if you're interested. After that, you want to like add some like transition effects here. Just like the impacts, the reverse, and a sweep down. And then basically to add some variation for verse 2, we had the drum start right away compared to the first verse. And to add more variation, I think this added some claps, I think, and then another cashmere snap, it looks like. And then there's also introducing these strings from Omnisphere, the Hollywood Studio strings, and they're just basically being auto-filtered and then opening up all the way at the chorus, basically. Oh yeah, something else I forgot to point out was this like little ambient vocal thing. Really simple, like you just find part of the vocal that you like, which is what I did there, and then just added the little altar boy again, some decapitator, and then some like a phone EQ, and then a reverb. Then to create more variation for the second build up, I basically did like the tension, kind of like holding out the first chord. This is gonna be done to taste, but sometimes you can hold out the first chord. So in this case, the first chord was, I think it was like a C minor chord. Yeah, and you can also try holding out the last one and see which one sounds better and just go with that. But yeah, I basically just had that hold out the whole entire way, as well as all like the chords and stuff too. We're just holding out the first chord. So all the saws and stuff. And then the ARP as well. Just play like a more repeating melody. But yeah, it's like the same exact like build-ups. I think I might have possibly added another riser, I think. I can't remember, but it's essentially like more or less the same stuff. And then the drop is literally the same exact drop. The only difference is that the clap from the music core starts right away. So you can see here. And yeah, basically it just does that all the way until the end. And then after that, with your same, very similar idea with the transitions. This like extended mix, like closing out or outro, is almost the same exact thing. It's just like the opposite, where you have more instruments and then you're just taking some out, basically. So And then lastly, the mastering for this track. I'm not gonna go like super in depth in it. We can do that for like another video. But this basically is just cutting out some of the highs because the highs was kind of harsh. But you want to set it on linear phase. There's actually a soothe on the whole entire master. And then this EQ here actually only turned on during the drop because the bass was kind of just too overwhelming. So I basically just kind of like dipped that frequency range just a little bit. And then this is during the build-up where build-up is getting a bit more mono. And then when the drop hits, it goes back to beat stereo. So that's basically what that's doing. And then this utility was actually because during the mix and mastering phase, I just make my tracks too loud. So this utility was just turn everything down. So that way, like when you put it in the Ozone 9 here, it doesn't start distorting everything when you start cranking everything. But even before the mastering phase, you know, what I did for this track with Severman, we basically mixed down everything so like the volumes are all balanced in terms of like all the atmospheres. You don't have like an atmosphere layer being too loud in the mix. You don't have it, you know, having too much reverb or delay. So everything was just like really cleaned up before starting the mastering phase. Sometimes you can even just bounce the stems to a separate project and just do the mastering like that. In this case, I thought it was a bit more convenient and also because my computer could handle it. But just in case like I needed to go back to fix some layers, you know, I could just easily go back and then not have to, you know, switch, bounce around projects and stuff like that. So pros and cons basically. And then in terms of mastering, first we have this vintage tape. And again, I'm not going to go like super in depth, but basically the speed. You hear like kind of like a more brighter sound, and then when we do 7.5, it becomes more dark. The input drive is, you know, self-explanatory. And then the bias, I believe, does a very similar thing where if we bring it down, I think it's going to be more higher the distortion. Basically see what happens there when we do that. And the harmonics basically is just going to bring more harmonics to the tape saturation basically. So. And then the low emphasis is basically like kind of adding a peak, you know, for the lower side of the distortion as well. Same thing, you know, with the highs. So yeah, that's pretty much what we did there with the vintage tape. And then dynamics here, we basically made some bands around the 10K, I think it was 1K and then 100 range, and basically just set the, I think there's like some standard amounts of like attack and release, and just compress the taste basically. So at the 10K range, we did about minus 35, 16, minus 20, and then minus 20 again. Imager, we didn't do anything. It looks like on band 3 there was a little bit of making a bit more spread between the 1,000 and 10,000 range, and then just making the sub range completely mono. And then after that is the exciter, which basically, you know, is adding more warmth, and really we're just adding a very slight amount to 5.2% in the 10K range again. And then after the exciter, we have a limiter next, which is self-explanatory. We're just cranking the volume basically. Basically just choosing a certain character that we like the most. And this match EQ is actually, I think, kind of like a reference track where you're kind of referencing the frequencies of another track to my track. So I think that's what literally we did here. You can also use another plugin called Reference 2, I think, where you can actually like have two separate tracks in, and then you can like isolate the frequencies and then start listening, you know, to the bass or the high end or whatever, and then figure out what frequencies your track might be lacking in. And yeah, that's it for Ozone 9. Interesting enough, I actually used 2 limiters, which is completely unnecessary. But if it sounds good in the mix, it sounds good. This is basically just making up for any more dBs to match like the LUFS on here. So in this case, I had a few reference tracks. I just referenced some more like popular like progressive house tracks that are like in 2020, 2022, because the I think the LUFS was actually I think a little lower compared to the tracks that were made in like 2013 or 14. I don't think I have the reference tracks in here too, but I basically just matched those LUFS to have my track match that LUFS. Yeah, well, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't yet. I also have a Patreon, so if you want project files, if you want in-depth feedback on your tracks, or if you want coaching, definitely check out my Patreon. As always, I will leave the link in the description below. And then also follow me on Instagram and TikTok. I post shorter music production tips on there, so if you like videos like this, you'll definitely like those shorter form videos. And also join the Discord. I'm looking to create a community where we can all help each other grow, give each other feedback and stuff like that. So if that sounds something of interest to you, definitely join that. As always, I will leave all the links in the description below. Thank you so much again for watching. Until next time, much love. Peace out.